So I'm Melissa Qualls. I'm a professor in the English department. This is Dr. Anna Londano. She's an environmental scientist. And we are co-chairs of a newly formed GE task force. I think I'm going to assume here that as we're going through this presentation, you'll understand what our mission has become as the GE task force as we talk about some of the issues that pertain to our current general education program and some changes that we hope to inspire. So let's go through here. Just very quickly too, the other members of the task force that are in attendance, Kevin Manley, who is the man who does everything and without whom we would all fall apart, honestly. Kevin, what is your official title now? He is the director of professional advising. So incredibly important that he's on the task force. We have Associate Professor Dr. Robin Elder of the Education Department and also our GE assessment guru. And I don't know if I see Matthias Wood, but he was also a part of our.
Sorry.
That's okay. Our small group. Is that okay?
Just to see if.
Does that work?
What?
I think that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have, waiting room.
Okay. Okay.
You want to go over there? Make sure. You can tell me when to move.
Okay, that's okay. All right, so let's go through this PowerPoint presentation. We hope that you can all join in at some point and collectively and collaboratively give us some feedback. Anna, can you help me out here? Okay, so let's start with a little bit of love. Most of us are here metaphorically in the room, virtually and physically in the room because we believe in the power and the potential reach of general education courses. Most of us are aware that universities and colleges around the country are struggling to make their GE programs more relevant and meaningful and coherent experiences for their students, and we are too. But before we examine why the struggle is happening, we wanted to celebrate and remind ourselves why GE programs matter and why so many of us spend so much time and loving attention to our general education courses. So this was a film that was produced by our own Phoebe Mussman. We asked her to do this over the summer, just so that we all began on sort of the same foot and the same reminder of the importance of general education. So I'm hoping that you can hear this. Oh. Oh. I don't know. All right.
Just.
Sorry, everybody, technical difficulties.
I wonder if they would be able to hear it because we're not playing it.
Oh,
Huh? Just share a screen.
all right. Now we can, we're hoping.
It doesn't, I don't think the sound is shared with the virtual people, just the
Okay.
video portion. You have to tell it you want sound to go with it. When you share your screen, just have to click, please share audio too, or there's a box.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Not that I'm not speaking from personal experience.
My home country in Argentina, we don't
Yay.
have a set
Woo, thank
curriculum
you.
for everyone. We don't have general education classes for everyone in college. So when I came here to the States and I came to understand what the general education curriculum meant, I thought that is genius, that's wonderful, because this gives the advantage to our students to be exposed to different disciplines, different careers, different perspectives.
I think one of the classes that really stood out to me was I studied Swahili. It just really opened my world up to a whole different dimension that I had never even thought about or experienced. And then I actually got to travel to East Africa and actually be immersed. General education classes oftentimes, help provide a perspective that's different than your own. And so I think helping students to get to a place where they can really be open to differences and people who are not like them, or cultures that are not like them, or just even having an open mind to realize that your perspective is just one in a field of many.
Coming in, sometimes as a freshman, it's like, oh, I just want to get into my major classes. But when you take those gen ed classes that are not related to your major or your choice or your idea of your study, it really opens up your mind and broadens your horizon to see what others are doing.
So I was a psychology communication major entirely because of general education. Taking those two courses just shifted my thinking in terms of what I was really interested in, which was what if I could really get to know other people? And that really kind of pulled me in to take some classes that when I started, I was uncomfortable, right? So taking a multicultural communication course and understanding that I have a privilege in how I communicate, and that I might use that privilege consciously or subconsciously in communicating to a marginalized population. Likewise, I have marginalized identities, and so how does that work? So really just got me thinking to just kind of slow down and reflect on myself, and I had not anticipated that.
It's just the fact that when we are given the opportunity to study things that is outside of where what we say our center program is, that's where your brain really has to start thinking. It's starting to put things together that you've never been exposed to. You start to get ideas that you might have never had before.
The class that impacted me the most was probably my world history class. Dr. Kirkstick's class helped me to see that all of those stories aren't really stories. They are actual events in history that have impacted who we are today across the world. I mean, taking it all the way down to an individual level and not thinking about history, but just how I want to live every day is making it better for someone else that's coming behind me.
If we're an institution of higher learning, then we have to really exercise that love of learning and be able to show that and to be able to experience that in all different areas, right? And that makes us very well-rounded, and it gives us all sorts of different tools that we might not have ever thought we really needed.
A set curriculum for every.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you were able to hear that eventually. There we go. Excellent. Thank you so much. Excellent. So I think when we were going through what we were going to talk about today, we really wanted to wrap it around to what we had learned the other day through all of our meetings. And there were some moments that really stuck with us. One was that the phrase RISE components should be the pillars of our educational institution. When we think about rigor and inclusiveness and support and engagement as being the pillars of this institution, I think we need to see general education as the foundation for those pillars, perhaps even as a gateway to those pillars, that general education plays such an important part in the engagement of our students, in supporting them, in hoping that they make it to to graduation. That's the ultimate goal. So the next number was a little startling to me personally, as a person who absolutely loves teaching first-year students, that 30% of our first-year students don't make it to our second year. Now, some of that is just, we all know, some of it is because some people just aren't ready for college the first time around. Just ask my husband, for example. But I think we all probably agree that number is too high. And it also is disheartening for me as a general education instructor that the majority of courses those students were exposed to during that first year were general education courses. And so that if we really want to increase the rigor, increase the inclusiveness, increase support, and increase engagement, we must think and we must really concentrate and focus on our general education program. The other phrase that we kept talking about in our smaller group was that without the bigger picture, without some end goal in mind, students struggle to understand how the pieces fit together. There's that wonderful, Dr. McGuire had that wonderful example of that excerpt about Christopher Columbus. Without that context, it made no sense. It made us start to think about puzzles. When you put together a puzzle, you need that ultimate picture in order to know how the pieces fit together. Otherwise, you're just sort of stumbling around blind. It reminded us of the phrase, can't see the forest for the trees, that we get so sometimes caught up in the minutia that we don't remember the bigger picture. And unfortunately, I think that that's what's happened with our education program. That here, all right. There we go. Thank you. I don't know why it was stuck for me. This computer does not like me, by the way. When we think of it from the professor side, our current general education program, our minds go to look at the vast array of these ILOs. Each of these ILOs, of course, have their own KPIs. I know that when I started assessing my general education courses, it was definitely getting lost in the trees. We couldn't see the forest. It was the kind of information we were gathering wasn't meaningful. And frankly, I wasn't learning anything about my courses or how meaningful my courses were. When we talked yesterday about students, the difference between learning and studying, I'm like, yeah, when it comes to GE, we're studying, we're not learning. And that's problematic. When we think about advising, of course, that this is what students see. They just see a sort of check the box laundry list. We call this like a cafeteria kind of model. That students often feel that our current GE program is just one more class they have to take, right? And what I think is lost is these questions, right? What is the bigger picture? What is the end goal of this general education program? For many of our students, it's just, well, once I finish the courses I'm supposed to take, I'm done, and hopefully I can get that finished within the first 2 years of my college career, because I don't ever really want to have to think about this again. In fact, when you take a look at, I know it doesn't like me. When you type in general education into our website, this is what pulls up. And I just want to give you a moment to read this and put yourself in the shoes of a student who's been told at this university that you need to take general education. So you type in general education, right? And this is what you get. This is the information you receive. I would be put off if I were a student. It talks about institutional learning outcomes, which doesn't seem like it has anything to do with me. It's about Lindenwood, right?
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, whoops.
Clearly.
That was Anna. I just want to say that was Anna, not me.
I was gonna say, yes. I was gonna throw in the question, do you feel the same way?
That this right here, again, we're kind of getting lost in the trees, right? We have these puzzle pieces, the students are taking these courses, many of them are incredibly valuable, but they don't have the larger picture. They don't know how to fit it all together. And frankly, it's not enough for us to keep telling them that. If we can give them the larger picture, then they can start to figure out, we have to trust them, right? That they will be able to figure out how these pieces will fit together. If we give them time to reflect about that, they will start to see how these pieces fit together. And here, so the change, the switch, the conceptual framework we are now working with is, I think, much clearer and a much better narrative. What is the ultimate goal? That our students will become leaders in their careers and their communities and in their lives. And we say leaders, we don't necessarily mean that they are the dominant voice or that they are not good team members. We are talking about that they have the skills necessary to take initiative in their lives, to understand that they can make change for themselves on a personal level, on a professional level, on a community level, on a global level. That's what we want. I think we can all agree that's what we want our students to be. And so this kind of framework, this conceptual framework of ultimate goal is our students will become leaders. How do we get them there? What are the characteristics that are needed for people to feel like they have that kind of agency in their life? Adaptable, we want our students to be adaptable problem solvers, effective communicators, responsible citizens, global advocates, lifelong learners, analytical thinkers, and ethical decision makers. So we've taken those, over 20 some odd ILOs with their own KPIs that are institutional learning outcomes. And now we are focusing on what are the attributes we want our students to have? What kind of people do we want them to be by the end of their 4 years here? By the time they graduate, what are the kind of people we want to throw out into the world and then hopefully make a difference? I have to say that when we went to a conference, so the people I introduced at the beginning, Robin Elder, Kevin Manley, Matthias Wood, Anna Landano, and myself, when we went to a conference, a lot of universities, a lot of colleges were very impressed with this switch and this conceptual framework. We were sort of seen as leaders, championing for a kind of meaningful change. So these are the definitions that were created by a lot of really hardworking people on campus. I want to throw a special mention out to Mitch, who was instrumental in developing these graduate attributes and these definitions. So here are the definitions that are sort of given to us, that adaptable problem solvers address and solve the issues of today and tomorrow. They adapt to a changing world through creative and innovative thinking. That responsible citizens take responsibility for their actions and understand their roles in the community. They engage in their communities by working collaboratively in order to promote the welfare of others. Global advocates seek to understand the perspectives of diverse populations and consider the global impact of their decisions. They appreciate diverse perspectives and demonstrate compassion and understanding of individual and cultural differences. Lifelong learners, might have to move this a little bit. Here we go. Lifelong learners are self-reflective and engage in activities for self-improvement. They independently seek professional opportunities for career enhancement. Effective communicators engage in meaningful discourse in order to persuade audiences and foster understanding and respect. They communicate fluently in multiple media. Ethical decision makers consider the well-being of others, relevant precedents, and their moral convictions when making decisions about the ethical questions of our changing world. And analytical thinkers use data and evidence to form judgments about complex situations and use deductive and quantitative reasoning skills to arrive at conclusions. If you were listening to these definitions, if you're kind of following along and thinking, well, actually, I think effective communicators are also XYZ, And I think that, well, maybe for analytical thinkers, can it also be such and such? So I want to kind of maybe do a little activity that I do in my own composition courses. I don't hand a rubric for my essays in my composition courses. I make the students come up with their own rubrics. They have to define the characteristics of an A paper. They have to define the characteristics of a B paper, a C paper, a D paper, an F. They have to negotiate in class and collaborate about the differences because there is some overlap, right? When does a paper go from an A to a B? When does an effective communicator go from somebody who engages in meaningful discourse to somebody who thinks and considers the well-being of others? Where is that line? So what I'd love to do right now, what we'd like to have you engage in is a breakout room where you start to consider how you would define these graduate attributes together in a small group. And I'm going to have Anna come up here and try to work her magic here. What I would love for you to do is when you get into your smaller groups, your breakout rooms in Zoom, that you designate one person who will take notes so that there's some collaboration there. and another who will present your group's answers within the larger community when we come back. Now you can answer anything you want, really. You can have any discussion that you wish, but here are 2 guiding questions. How would you define these terms, and what characteristics, skill sets, specific content knowledge should a student develop or practice or possess in order to become a more perfect, effective communicator, right? I really like this idea of a more perfect. We went to Washington, D.C. this summer, and that was the words that kept pounding in my head, right? A more perfect union. We're not there yet. But we can get there, right? With the right kind of change and the right kind of, again, feelings of agency. So it's that we want to take our students to become more perfect, adaptable problem solvers and responsible citizens and so forth. So what I'd like to do is, if you can remember these groups when you are broken into your groups, that group one will do adaptable problem solver, group 2 responsible citizen. Will they be able to see this screen when they're in their Zoom?
No, they won't. Actually. Kevin, I think I need your help.
You can copy and paste it into a message that goes to all of us, though.
Yes, I think that's what we're gonna get Kevin up. He's
I think it's in the meeting.
Oh, do you want to do?
Meeting rooms.
Oh, do you need to need to figure out the meeting rooms? Okay.
If I did it.
Yeah, I'm not. Where is our, sorry, everybody, we're having problems figuring out the chat, how to set up the Zoom. Well, there you go. Got it. Thank
Already
you.
It's in session, so we can.
Okay.
So we.
What if we just, since we're already running low on time, let's go ahead and just ask people to throw in for each one.
Yeah.
And then we can take notes here. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Okay, so on chat, everyone, we're gonna just take this one by one, and I want everyone to participate, type in or join in with your microphone. We're gonna start with, Anna, can you get the, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We're gonna start with and make sure the chat is up. Thank you. We're going to start with adaptable problem solver. So right now in the chat box or using your microphone, since we have a small group anyway, everyone jump on and tell me synonyms that you can think. How would you define adaptable problem solver? What are some characteristics of an adaptable problem solver? Are there certain themes, certain content areas that a student needs to be exposed to be a more perfect adaptable problem solver? Good. So flexible mind. Thank you, Mel. Multiple perspectives, critical thinker, can pivot. I love that. Open-minded, enduring. Yes, thank you, Matthias, has grit. The ability to synthesize multiple viewpoints. So synthesize.
And made it, with me going wrong. I like that.
Yeah. Paradigm shift promoter, growth mindset. Linda, thank you. That growth mindset, absolutely. And patient, empathy and patient. Thank you, all of you, for being patient with us as we're going through these technical difficulties. Project management. Thank you, Peter. Yes, managing projects. Philosophy, logic would be valuable. Absolutely. Absolutely. And can uncouple the personal from the collective goal. Thank you, Mel. Risk taking. So all of these are beautiful. When we think about somebody who's adaptable, who can sort of pivot, problem solve in the moment, doesn't get overwhelmed with anxiety, right? Doesn't get overwhelmed with the ideas of being imperfect. I think that's a really important aspect that I've seen in some of my really smart students when I teach at the Honors College, that some of our smartest and brightest students are really scared to take risks. They're scared about facing a problem that they might not be automatically capable of solving because they don't want to look stupid, right? They don't want to look incapable. So adaptable problem solver, I think that means that in our classrooms, we deliberately introduce students to problems that are really complex, that do not have a simple answer, that maybe, just maybe, even at the end of the semester, you have more questions than answers. But that's okay, because that is the real world. That's going to be in a business model where you might have one solution, but then a couple other problems pop up, right? And to be adaptable means that you can be flexible, you can pivot, you can manage those expectations. Love the problem, not the solution. Thank you, Melissa. That's beautiful. And good point about, yes, of empathy. Perfect.
Let's move to the next one.
Yes.
So I think we're going to save the chat.
So do you want to take responsible citizen?
Yeah, so we're going to move on to the next one, responsible citizen. So again, thoughts, what do you think a responsible citizen should be? That's great. Understand government, so important.
Yes, thank you, Brian.
Vote, I love that. Inclusiveness. Thinks about others. I love the interconnectedness. That's really, really important now. Knows how to vote. Attentive with their surroundings. Understand also NGOs. Oh, that is interesting. Yes, thank you, Mark. Knows how to vote intelligently. These are all great ideas. Open to another side of an issue. That's really important.
It seems like, especially Brian, you are focusing on this idea of action, that it's one thing to have knowledge of a citizen. It's one thing to have knowledge about how democracy works, but to be responsible means, yeah, exercise civility. Thank you, Jeremy. That active engagement, that there is something with responsible citizenship that we all feel akin to making a difference in the world around us. It's not enough to have that knowledge, to put it into action somehow. Of course, the most prescient way is voting. That would be a really great start. But even other ways of social activism, I think, and community outreach. So I think for here, especially service learning, the push for more service learning capabilities and components and our coursework, I think really fit in well with being a responsible citizen. Belonging, Ben, beautiful. Being responsible knows being attuned to who's in and who's out, who counts and who doesn't. Moreover, those boundaries change for reasons that are often unjust. Like, beautiful, Ben. Absolutely. Yeah, and a global citizen too. Yes, which we're going to come to that a little bit, Brian. That has a little bit of an overlap with the next one, which is global advocate.
Throw that one out.
So let's do global advocate.
So we can have them separated. So what do you guys think about a global advocate? What kind of qualities should we see in a global advocate? We can save the chat.
Languages, yes, Brian.
Yes, thank you. I love it. Languages. Said the Spanglish writing person. Yes, languages. I want to say something else. Although a lot of you probably share this thought, but languages doesn't just limit it to be able to speak in another language. Is be able to integrate with the culture and understand the nuances of the culture that you are speaking the language to. So it brings more than just being able to say the words in a different language. So I love that. Maps. Yes. Know where everything is. So important. Culturally sensitive. Cultural fluency. Very important.
So in our current general education program, Anna and I are on the GE committee, so is Ben Cooper, who's joined in on the chat. And I think some of the most inspiring courses that have come through our general education committee lately have all had the 2.5 diverse perspectives as one of their skill ILOs. And those courses, I mean, I want to take them. You know, I think Jeremy Carnes, he's on the chat too. We just approved a course by him, I think the last year, Japanese literature and Japanese anime. I mean, my kids want to take that course, Jeremy. They're sort of like, can I? I know, can I jump in? Can I want to study manga on a like professional level. So this idea of, you know, I think Global Advocate would dovetail very nicely with 2.5, with the diverse perspectives and that appreciation and empathy and understanding of multiple perspectives, really, really key. The next one, lifelong learner, I think for many of us, when we were looking at these attributes, I know for me personally, I was sort of like, what does that mean? How does that translate into a college course? So this might be an interesting one. I'd really love to see your feedback on what it means to you. What are the characteristics, the skill sets, even maybe course content knowledge for somebody we would consider to be a lifelong learner? What does that look like?
Yeah, hungry, even just to be curious, exactly, to know that there's things out there that one can research, like have that hunger for knowledge, curiosity. Yeah, just
Metacognition, thank you.
metacognition, yes.
Yes.
Humility also was shared here, as to know what you don't know, and that there's things out there that you can search to learn.
And I love this link with metacognition from yesterday, you know, just being aware of the gap, right? Like,
Yeah.
mind the gap.
Mind the gap, yes.
When understanding, you know, and that's Socrates, right? That's a wise person, knowing how much you don't know.
Then sharing though that this category for lifelong learners seems that it could benefit from an independent study course, which, yeah, even, you know, an independent study, something that is multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. I think that will be, you know, quite great. We could have like a team taught class, people from different colleges. That will definitely show the connections of why this gen ed is important, that we're not silos, that everything should be integrated. I think that's a great idea. What is Gidgen? I have no idea.
And so this, you know, when we think about lifelong learner, some of these attributes are going to fit very nicely and neatly with general education courses, and maybe some of them will be, you know, more appropriate for higher level capstone courses, for example, or internships. That can be a part of this lifelong learner. But we'd also like to integrate that within the general education program, that to give the students at some point during their general education program, their career here, that they do reflect on how all of this is connected, right? The bigger picture that we were talking about, and also the bigger picture that extends beyond their 4 years at this university. How is this, their college experience here, just one piece of their larger puzzle in becoming a lifelong learner? And to try to inspire that in them. So that are, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to share Jeremy's, and you can all read it, that is constantly needing to retrain, that what we give them here as students is not the end of the knowledge, right? That they need to continue to improve themselves, search. The world is evolving, so they do, like they have to do that as well. That's good. Let's move on, Joe. In the interest of time, we're going to move to the effective communicator. Visual, written, and auditory, definitely. Being able to articulate thoughts and ideas using appropriate level of vocabulary, extremely important. And across multiple audiences, not just kind of like put yourself in the field that you know the best, but you need to be able to communicate with others. Well, we know we're putting in some ideas. I want to throw something out there that happened in my home country in Colombia. We had a big natural disaster in 1985. And scientists had gone before the disaster happened to share to the community what they needed to do if an alarm went off. The alarm went off and people did exactly the opposite of what they had been advised. And we lost 22,000 people that night. So questions came about what failed, what happened here. And one of the things that came out was communication. Like we have to be able to communicate with the community in general, be able to move from our field into others. So this is this one is really close to my heart, I guess. I just wanted to share that story because we tend to miss that when we get to field specific.
And this is also, of course, incredibly important to different companies and different employers. They want to see their new hires as being incredibly effective in communicating, and that is digitally as well. We kind of left out digital communication here, but that's increasingly important to be able to communicate effectively in digital arenas. I know, for example, today that's not my strong suit, trying to communicate effectively on Zoom, but that this is and to be in a there you go.
Good point.
And Shanika's absolutely right that there's again that these boundaries kind of blur together, right? At one point, of course, to be a real global advocate, you must be an effective communicator, and to be an effective communicator, you must be a good problem solver. And all of these are, of course, interconnected. And I hope that the students will begin to make those connections as well. The very basic markup coding skills are general education level communication skills. Jeremy, I think I agree. And that might be something too, Jeremy, that I think could be a part of this micro-credentialing, that students could get a micro-credential, for example, in a coding language, so that they wouldn't take a 3-hour course on just computer coding languages, right? But maybe just a 1-hour micro-credential. And that is kind of an exciting possibility to think about as we're integrating RISE pillars into our general education program. Okay, so the last two, let's do ethical decision maker. What does that mean to be ethical as you make your choices? What are kind of some of the skill sets and competencies that students need in order to be ethical decision makers? Are there course content, specific courses that you think would align with this particular attribute?
Oh,
Yeah.
History, philosophy. I'm gonna add history. Say environmental sciences.
Is this just I'm honestly want to know, do we think this is just the realm of course in morality or course in ethics? Yeah. Oh, thank you, Melissa. Yeah. Exploration of historical privileges. Who has them and who doesn't? Absolutely. Mel says, keeping in mind that in any given situation with any given rule or legal system, it's built for some more so than others. Looking at those systems and trying to understand who is and is not being served and who needs to be and isn't yet. Yeah, Ben Cooper, I absolutely agree that, business is one of the, that's number 2 in the number of students who get a degree at Lindenwood. And I think, as we all know, that business ethics should not be seen as oxymoronic, is what I'm trying to say. They should be seen as a wise and good parent.
Mass communication theory. I like that.
Yeah. Yes, I think so too, Jeremy. Absolutely. I think for me, ethics is tied so closely with empathy that once we begin to understand how our decisions affect not just us and the people in our tribe, but the peoples from around the world. And I think that our ethical decision-making will become more profound and deeper and more meaningful. Yeah, Mel, absolutely. So this idea, again, trying to break out of this, ethics is simply a matter for the philosophy department. Start to think of, in what ways can my course start to create and promote this kind of ethical and moral base for decisions? And the last one, analytical thinker. What do we think there?
I think before we move on to analytical thinker, I think it's good to throw out some of the discussions we've had about how wonderful it would be to connect like classes in ethics with a field specific, like to be able to have team taught courses that will put it like more, I don't know, more like, I don't know, if plain is a good word, but like more obvious to our students, this is the connections that we need to make. Sometimes we keep it too much into the humanities field, but in the sciences though, unless it's very tied or teacher at a really high level course, I think we need to engrave that from the very beginning. So there's plenty like really good opportunities to grow these here. Okay, analytical thinker.
We are very humanities heavy in this group right now. So,
Yeah.
So I think there might be a little blip right now, like, oh, I don't know, something with math, you know?
Please, so I can hear you.
Okay. So I was saying, thank you, Anna, for making that comment, because in a workshop that I participated in earlier this summer, this institution, what they did to enhance their numbers in their ethics and philosophy department, they infused ethics content across the university, and specifically into the sciences. And that not only created more majors in philosophy, and they also created an ethics minor, but also enhanced their courses in the sciences inevitably. So that's exactly what you just mentioned.
That's awesome. Jeremy, I really love your comment that critical thinking kind of overlaps. And I think it was deliberate that critical thinking is not on this list, because critical thinking, I think, has become such a catch-all. And it's such a broad term that's hard sometimes to define it and be really specific. So yeah, absolutely. When we talk about analysis, we do that in our world literature classes, literary analysis, where you sort of break down, do a close reading of the different parts of a story or a poem. That to me is analytical thinking, to break down, break apart. Yeah, business case studies. Realization when slower, more careful decision maker is needed. Thanks, Peter. Problem-based learning would be a great approach for this attribute, really for all. Yes, problem-based learning. Yes, Shanika. Absolutely. And which is chemistry. There's no creative category, since creative work will also draw upon most of all these attributes. Yes, absolutely, Jeremy.
Titrations.
Titrations.
Love that, Ben.
And Melissa, help build mindfulness, an overused word that creates a quiet for analysis to emerge. Yes. Yeah. Giving students a little bit of space. We talked about before, being okay with failure, being okay with getting it wrong.
Yeah.
So analytical thinker and adaptable problem solver, to me, they're very closely related in that way. Yeah. And Chris, where do you learn citations? I can just see people will be rushing our gates, Jeremy, with that slogan.
Yes.
I think we present it to Dr. Porter right now. Yes. Yes, information literacy. Thanks, Jeremy. All right, well, thank you. We've been taking notes, and we will look at this chat and
Save the chat.
Thank you. So let's move on, because I know we've got another meeting all to get to. And so I wanted to make sure that
That went well.
that turned a little differently than we expected, but it's all good. Okay. So here are some further areas for you as valuable members of our community to kind of ponder. you can start to ask yourself, how do my current GE courses fulfill the promise of these new graduate attributes? And where maybe it doesn't, that's okay too. Where perhaps, maybe even more importantly, are there ways to tweak some of my courses in small but significant ways? Yeah,
Quiet thinking.
thank you. Small but significant ways. Think of the study one for RISE. Those of you who may have been during yesterday's RISE, I think it was a town hall meeting. Kristen went over the 2 different studies that we can be a part of that she really wants us to participate in. And I approached her afterwards and I said, can I please link this with what we're going to talk about with the graduate attributes? She's like, yes. She said, one thing that she told me, and I thought it was incredibly wise. She said, we need to stop thinking of our general education courses as 100 level introduction to majors that professors find boring to teach, students find boring to take, and leave everybody with sort of a bitter taste in their mouth, right? And that often we throw to our adjuncts, who are, many of them, brilliant and hardworking and wonderful people, wonderful teachers. But that's a sign, an indication of how much we treasure these courses if we allow, right? If we say our full-time faculty members are quote unquote too important not to teach these courses. So this idea of, thinking of some of your general education courses to tweak in small but significant ways. Think of the study one for RISE, where you do a small little tweak, and maybe you want to be more inclusive in a particular course. You want to increase your inclusiveness, and you tie that to being a responsible citizen, or you tie that to being an ethical decision maker, or you tie that to being an adaptable problem solver. Does that make sense, everybody? Like you're like 2 birds, 1 stone, Plus you're being part of a study for RISE. Plus you are really thinking about how to best reach our first-year students. All of that, so let's really take all of these different avenues and different initiatives on campus and make a sort of, again, the bigger picture. Let's put all the puzzle pieces together to come up with a better goal in mind. So you can think of maybe tweaking some of your courses in small but significant ways to more intentionally and consciously guide your students toward embodying one or more of these attributes. You could begin envisioning an entirely new GE course. Think of study 2 for RISE that would help shape or create students into more perfect whatever you want. So personally, I'm thinking, I went to a conference in Washington, DC over the summer. It was about deliberation. And now I really, really, really want to completely blow up my Comp 2 class, make it all about deliberation, make it all about doing some sort of service learning, because I was inspired by some of the speakers at this conference. And I think that, to me, is not only an effective communicator, but a really good avenue for being a responsible citizen. You're taking those communication skills and you're making a difference in the world around you. How beautiful is that, right? And so to start to think about, and again, if I can do that and think about how to connect it with RISE, with inclusiveness, with support, with engagement, with rigor, then I'm also improving my teaching goals as well as my students' experience. Yeah, I think Mel says, if it would be at all helpful to anyone, thank you. Mel did a webinar for culturally responsive assessments. Oh, I didn't know that. That includes contemplative teaching. Yes. Beautiful. And there's a really big pitch too in AAC&U, that particular conference, on reflection, embodying reflection for your students in the course, which was really, really cool too. Everyone, please do consider participating in RISE research study number 1 for Shanika. See the website for more info. Please note that the research study number 2 will have a much more smaller group of participants. Thanks, Shanika. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. And so a couple of other possibilities here. Our task force, this is what we are endeavoring to do in the next few years. We want to integrate high impact practices, RISE pillars, into our GE general education course program. We want to start looking at different ways of assessing so that students feel like there's an ultimate goal, maybe perhaps e-portfolios, looking into freshman seminars. I know Ben Cooper has been doing a lot of work with the Great Books kind of series. Love to talk to him more about that. Perhaps even a GE capstone kind of course for GE, so that students, there's a goal, this is it, and that is maybe a time for reflection, a time to become a lifelong learner. Team taught, we talked about team taught synthesis courses and learning communities, and I know that we've been doing that for a while, but really become more conscious, have a really big push. Talk to the administration about how to make sure our deployment isn't, how to do this in a fair and equitable way. But they are very open, especially Mark Valenzuela, when we talk to him about team taught synthesis courses and learning communities and everything else. And then we talked already about badges and micro-credentialing, so that there's this idea that, if students take a certain number of courses in like service learning or responsible citizen, that they earn a badge, they earn a certificate, they earn some physical thing, so that again, they're seeing that there's a larger purpose, that these aren't just disparate classes that they kind of pick up here and there like a cafeteria line, but that they're working towards something, that this course connects to this course, connects to this course, and then you get a badge at the end of that. People love badges. Assessment tools continue to use the communities of practice model. So instead of that kind of obnoxious, have to analyze every single ILO with every single KPI, Robin Elder, who's amazing, has been leading our communities of practice. Many of you participated in one or more of these models. I think it's much more beneficial from those I actually learned. I learned what was working, what was not working. It was not just at the end of the year, slap some numbers. It doesn't really, it's all meaningless, arbitrary. It was a learning experience. And what was also really wonderful is that we learned how to do better, what we needed to do better. Generate new assessment tools and rubrics with faculty feedback. So we're going to take what you have given us today, and we're going to use all that information in creating rubrics for these attributes, so that there's a clear guide in the future for you. If you want, if you think, oh, my course really is responsible citizen, let's take a look at what my key assessment and my signature assessment assignment needs to do in order to be a part of these communities of practice. And I also wanted to share a couple of, I know we're getting close to time here, everyone. I want to make sure to give you a couple of minutes to go to the bathroom before our next meeting. I don't know if these are going to be linked up or not because it didn't work for the last one. But if you're interested in looking at the equivalencies right now between the ILO graduate attributes. So Robin gave me these. Thank you, Robin, for doing that. So this is a document that I wrote up a few months ago. No, thanks. Okay. And it will sort of show you some of the overlap right now. Here is our new graduate attribute right here. That's the definition that we've been working with. And then here are the ILOs that kind of sort of overlap. As you can tell though, if you are critical, if you have a course that's 2.3, you could be adaptable problem solver, or you could be a lifelong learner, or you could be an analytical thinker. I mean, there's a lot of room here. This is not going to be an easy mapping process. And we want professors like you to be heavily involved in determining what attribute you think your course should obtain. Okay, and the graduate attributes themselves are on this link. So this will be on the PowerPoint that we'll send out. And then here's the task force members. There's our wonderful Sue Edley, there's Robin Elder, there's Tani Ferraroni Hunt from business, Mate, who's one of my favorite human beings, Matthias, John Troy, of course, Mark Valenzuela, Karen Smith, she's the new director of student involvement, Christy Rogers, Adam, who is an instructional designer, Kevin Manley, the God extraordinaire, Kathy Vasovich, and Anna and I, who are the co-chairs. As you can see, that we are going to try to get student involvement in this. We have staff members that are involved in this. We want to make sure that these new graduate attributes are not something that's just taught in the classroom, but extended throughout the student's experience and their careers here. So we want to get SAS involved. We want to get student involvement involved. We want everybody's voice at this table so that we're all on the same page and can all really start to embrace these graduate attributes and use them as the sort of beating heart and a sort of center for how we move forward. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me or to Anna. If you need further information, my door is always open to you. And we will, Anna and I, we're going to be giving a similar presentation, much shorter. We're going to play a video for students tomorrow, our new students, and we're going to introduce them to the graduate attributes so that they can, again, start to see the bigger picture. Yeah, we're going to, be really pumped up and
Yes.
excited, and hopefully we're not even going to rely on this will be much better. Yes, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you in the full faculty meeting.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Yes, as we move along, start thinking about, your courses, and, with that document, start to think of where it fits or how can you tweak it to maybe have a few more of those attributes in. Thank you.